me guess. You woke up this morning and, before your feet even touched the floor, you reached for your phone. Maybe it was TikTok, Instagram, a flood of emails, and within seconds, your brain is already crowded with other people's noise. But here's the thing, you have plans, you have goals, there's a version of you that wants to build something real, and yet, day after day, it all gets buried beneath the scroll. You're not lazy, you're not broken, but you are distracted, pulled in every direction but your own, and deep down, you can feel it. This isn't how life is supposed to feel. In this video, we're diving into something many of us quietly struggle with: overthinking, numbness, and that frustrating loop of procrastination. These aren't just personal flaws or signs of laziness. They're symptoms of something much deeper, a life being lived on autopilot, a life where your attention is hijacked by noise, distraction, routine, before you've even had a chance to ask yourself what you truly want. To find our way back, we're turning to one of the most powerful and provocative thinkers in philosophy, Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche believed that most people weren't really living, they were just existing, going through the motions, not because they didn't care, but because they were taught to fear discomfort more than they valued purpose. His solution wasn't about chasing comfort, it wasn't about numbing the discomfort away, it was about facing it head-on, confronting your current reality, no matter how messy, and using it as fuel to create something new, a new direction, a new identity, a new life. In this video, we'll break down 3 of Nietzsche's most relevant ideas for the modern world: the trap of the last man, where comfort becomes a cage, the myth of motivation, and why waiting to feel ready keeps you stuck, and most importantly, how to reclaim your life through what Nietzsche called the will to power, your inner drive to shape life on your terms. If you've been feeling stuck, this might just be the wake-up call you didn't know you needed. You keep telling yourself you're going to change, start that project, hit the gym, finally delete those apps that drain your energy. You keep setting intentions, real ones. You want to be clear, focused, disciplined. You want to feel like you're in charge of your life again. But then the day happens. Hours slip through your fingers. You scroll, you click, you float, and by the time the sun sets, you're not quite sure where the time went or what you were even thinking about. You're caught in what feels like mental static, a low hum of endless thoughts, scattered and repetitive. You're thinking all the time, but it doesn't lead anywhere. It doesn't bring clarity, just more noise. And slowly, that noise becomes your normal. You forget what it felt like to wake up excited. You stop asking where you're headed. The days blur together. Mornings feel like rewinds. Even your own thoughts don't feel like yours anymore. They feel programmed, automatic, like background apps running without your permission. That's the scariest part. Not that you feel lost, but that you've learned how to live with it. You've adjusted to the disorientation. You've grown numb to your own potential. But here's the truth. That dull ache you carry, the one you try to ignore, is actually your inner compass. It hasn't stopped working. It's just been drowned out. And the moment you stop numbing and start listening is the moment everything can begin to shift. But what if this restlessness you feel, this vague, gnawing discomfort, wasn't something to numb, fix, or escape? What if it was your soul trying to get your attention? Nietzsche saw emotions like anxiety, boredom, and even dread not as flaws, but as signals. They weren't signs that something was broken. They were messages, warnings, invitations. He believed that when we're disconnected from our deeper instincts, when we're not living in alignment with our inner values, those feelings begin to surface, not to punish us, but to push us toward a more honest life. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. That quote isn't just poetic. It's a lifeline, because once you lose your why, your reason, your direction, you don't stop living, but you start drifting. You fill the silence with noise. You scroll, you chase distractions, you spiral through routines that feel increasingly hollow. But the restlessness, that's the friction between who you are and who you're pretending to be. And here's the hopeful part. That means it's not too late. That means your inner compass is still working. It's just buried under layers of habits, fears, and false priorities. If you can slow down long enough to really listen, if you can begin to reconnect with that deeper why, everything shifts, focus returns, discipline makes sense, life starts to feel meaningful again, not because it got easier, but because you remembered what you were living for. Still, something inside you resists. You tell yourself, I'll start tomorrow, or I just need to get my life together first, or maybe the most comforting lie of all, everyone else is like this too. It feels safer to wait, to postpone, to believe that you're just temporarily out of sync. But deep down, you sense it's not just a bad week or a passing phase. It's a pattern, a quiet resignation dressed up as self-preservation. Nietzsche saw this long before the age of smartphones and endless distraction. He called it The Last Man, a portrait of the modern person who has stopped striving for anything higher, someone who fears discomfort more than they value meaning, a life reduced to routine, safety, and small, shallow pleasures. They have their little pleasures for the day and their little pleasures for the night, but they have a regard for health. Thus spoke Zarathustra. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? The morning coffee, the endless scrolling, the binge-watching that bleeds into sleep. We laugh when we're supposed to. We nod along with the noise of the world. On the surface, everything looks fine, maybe even normal. But underneath it all, we're hollow. Not because we're broken, but because we've forgotten what it feels like to live with depth. We've traded challenge for comfort, meaning for convenience, and slowly, without realizing it, we've dulled the very instincts that once pushed us toward growth, purpose, and passion. The tragedy of the last man isn't that he suffers, it's that he avoids suffering so well. He forgets what it means to truly live. If any of this is hitting close to home, if you feel like something inside you is trying to wake up, consider liking or subscribing. This channel is here to help you think deeply, live honestly, and find clarity where there's been chaos. Nietzsche didn't believe in self-help, not in the way we often think of it today. He wasn't interested in hacks, tips, or temporary motivation. His philosophy was far more demanding and far more liberating. He believed in self-overcoming, the lifelong process of facing your inner contradictions, outgrowing old versions of yourself, and becoming someone new, not someone more polished or productive, but someone real, someone awake, sovereign, alive on their own terms. This wasn't about chasing happiness or checking off goals. It was about reclaiming your inner authority. Nietzsche challenged us to stop outsourcing our sense of meaning to religion, to tradition, to culture, and instead become the ones who create it. He didn't want followers, he wanted creators. And at the heart of that creation was a call to radical honesty, not the surface level kind where you admit your bad habits, but the deeper kind, where you question the entire structure of who you think you are, the stories you've inherited, the rules you never agreed to, the beliefs you absorbed before you were old enough to understand them. He wrote, "Become who you are." On the surface, it sounds like a fortune cookie, but to Nietzsche, it was a declaration of war against the false self. It meant burning down the borrowed scripts, peeling back the layers of fear and conformity, and writing your life from scratch, not to impress others, but to live in truth with yourself. It's not easy, it's not always pleasant, but it's the only path to becoming something more than a reflection of the world around you. It's how you stop drifting and finally begin to become. Here's where things start to change. You stop asking the same tired question, "Why am I so stuck?" as if the answer lies in some hidden flaw or missing piece, and instead, you begin to ask better, braver questions. What am I afraid to confront? What parts of myself have I silenced in order to stay safe? This shift isn't about blaming yourself, it's about getting honest. Because being stuck isn't just about laziness or lack of clarity, it's often about avoidance. There's something you don't want to feel, a truth you've been circling around but haven't dared to face. Nietzsche understood this well. His answer to stagnation wasn't another motivational speech, it was momentum, the kind that comes not from comfort but from confrontation, from facing what you've been running from and deciding to move forward anyway. He called it the will to power, not a desire for dominance over others, but a deeper instinct, the drive to rise, to shape your life, to create meaning even in the face of pain, especially in the face of pain. It's not about becoming fearless. It's about learning to walk with fear and keep going. It's about taking your raw, chaotic energy, the anxiety, the restlessness, the confusion, and turning it into fuel, not to control the world, but to take responsibility for your own inner world. That's real power, not perfection, not predictability, but movement, growth, becoming. And it begins the moment you stop trying to fix yourself and start trying to face yourself. But the moment you step into this new awareness, when you finally decide to stop drifting and start reclaiming your life, that's when the resistance shows up. And it doesn't come from the outside. It comes from the most familiar place of all, your own mind. That quiet, corrosive voice, the one that whispers, "You're too late. You'll just mess it up again. Who do you think you are to change now?" This is the real fight, not against other people, not against your circumstances, but against the version of you that clings to the past because it feels safer than stepping into the unknown. That part of you would rather stay stuck than risk failure. It disguises itself as logic, caution, humility, but at its core, it's fear. Nietzsche understood this inner battle better than most, and he offered a strange, almost haunting tool for this exact moment of crisis, the idea of eternal recurrence. He asks you to imagine this. What if you had to live your exact life, the same joys, the same regrets, the same moments of hesitation, over and over again, forever? Would you curse it, or would you change how you're living right now to make it worth repeating? It's not just a philosophical game, it's a mirror, one that forces you to confront your choices with brutal honesty. If this life is the only one you get, would you still be waiting, still playing small, still postponing your becoming? Eternal recurrence doesn't offer comfort, it demands clarity, and in that clarity, you get to decide, will you keep rehearsing the past, or will you start living a life you'd be proud to repeat? Nietzsche's ultimate answer to the chaos, confusion, and suffering of life wasn't to escape it, it was to embrace it. He called it Amor Fati, the love of fate, not just accepting what's happened to you, but loving it, not because it was easy or fair, but because it shaped you, because it gave you the raw material to become something more. Amor Fati is the courage to stop wishing for a different past, and instead begin to craft meaning from the one you've lived. It's about turning pain into perspective, suffering into story, and story into strength, not by pretending it didn't hurt, but by refusing to let it define you. This is where overthinking begins to lose its grip, not when you finally figure out the perfect plan, not when you have total control over what comes next, but when you stop trying to perfect the future and start participating in the present. When you realize that life isn't waiting to be solved, it's waiting to be shaped. You don't need more tips, more self-help content, more intellectual frameworks. What you need is to become the one who decides, the one who stops seeking approval and starts trusting their own voice, the one who owns their past without being owned by it. That's what Nietzsche meant by self-mastery, not domination, not endless discipline, but authorship, the power to say, this is who I've been, and this is who I choose to become. You can't control everything that happens to you, but you can choose the meaning you give it. You can choose how you respond. You can choose to stop drifting and begin creating. Amor Fati isn't resignation, it's reclamation, a decision to live fully, fiercely, and unapologetically as the author of your own life. So you return to your life. Same job, same phone, same responsibilities. The world hasn't changed, but you have. You're no longer sleepwalking through your days, reacting on autopilot. That endless loop of distraction, doubt, and delay, it doesn't hold the same power anymore. You've seen it for what it is, a barrier between you and your potential. And now, something is different. You don't reach for your phone the moment silence hits. You pause, you breathe, you choose. These aren't massive, dramatic shifts. They're subtle, but powerful. You start showing up with more presence. You begin asking yourself what actually matters instead of just following the script handed down to you by culture, fear, or habit. And here's the real transformation. You've reclaimed authorship. You're not trying to be perfect. You're not waiting to feel ready. You've simply stopped outsourcing your direction. You're writing your own story now, moment by moment, choice by choice. Nietzsche never promised an easy life. What he offered was something better, the courage to live one that's yours, to walk through the same world with new eyes, a steadier mind, and a stronger will. This is the return, not to comfort, but to clarity, not to numbness, but to depth, not to who you were, but to who you've decided to become. And that, in the end, is the true elixir, a life no longer borrowed, but claimed. Nietzsche didn't offer comfort, he offered a challenge to stop numbing yourself with distraction, to stop blaming the world, your past, or your circumstances, to stop waiting for the perfect moment to begin, because you don't need a flawless strategy or a 10-step plan. What you need is something deeper, a reason to rise, a reason to live. His call wasn't about perfection, it was about presence. Live so that you would wish to live it again, not as someone who has it all figured out, but as someone who is awake, who chooses, who dares to live deliberately even when it's hard, even when the path is unclear. This isn't about becoming someone else, it's about finally becoming yourself, boldly, unapologetically, on your terms. So here's the question I'll leave you with. If today repeated endlessly, just as it is, would you be proud of how you lived it? Not someday, not when things settle down, but today. Let me know in the comments.